There's a story we have been telling ourselves for a very long time. It begins in darkened movie theaters and in the glossy pages of science fiction novels, and it ends with humanity triumphant, scattered across the stars, our civilization blooming on 1,000 distant worlds. It is a beautiful story. It is also, when measured against the cold arithmetic of astrophysics, a story that the universe has no intention of honoring. I want to take that story apart tonight, not because I am a pessimist, and not because I believe the human spirit lacks ambition. I want to take it apart because the truth hiding underneath it is so much more staggering, so much more humbling, and in its own severe and magnificent way, so much more beautiful than the fiction we have constructed to replace it. Let us begin with a creature. Imagine deep beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, at a depth so extreme that the pressure bearing down on every square centimeter of its body would be equal to the weight of 50 commercial aircraft stacked directly above it, a small organism that has spent roughly 10 million years evolving at the edge of a hydrothermal vent at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. This creature knows nothing of sunlight. It has never experienced a gravitational environment that is anything other than the crushing, constant weight of 5 miles of seawater above it. Its cellular machinery, its enzyme structures, its every molecular configuration has been tuned across geological timescales to function within a razor-thin corridor of pressure, temperature, and chemical availability. It is not merely adapted to that environment. It is, in a very deep physical sense, a direct product of that environment. The environment wrote its biology. Now imagine reaching down into that trench with an enormous hand, pulling that creature out of the water in a single violent second, and setting it on the frozen, wind-blasted summit of a mountain in the Himalayas. What happens is not a failure of will. It is not a failure of courage. What happens is a rapid, irreversible cascade of physical and chemical events that the creature is completely powerless to prevent, because every single mechanism it possesses to maintain biological order was calibrated for a set of physical conditions that no longer exist anywhere in its vicinity. That is not a metaphor. That is precisely what interstellar travel means for a human being. We are that creature. Our solar system is that trench, and the interstellar void is that frozen mountain peak, except the distances are measured in light years. The temperatures approach absolute zero, and the hostile forces operating on our biology are not wind and low pressure, but something far more insidious, far more patient, and far more mathematically absolute. Let us talk about what that void actually contains, because popular imagination tends to think of space as simply empty, as a featureless vacuum that a well-engineered spacecraft simply needs to cross. This is one of the most consequential misunderstandings a human being can hold. The interstellar medium is not empty. It is saturated with radiation. It is threaded continuously with galactic cosmic rays, which are subatomic particles that have been accelerated to velocities approaching the speed of light by the violent deaths of massive stars, by the churning magnetic field surrounding collapsed neutron stars, by the colossal energy output of active galactic nuclei. These particles carry energies measured in billions and even trillions of electron volts. They do not stop at the hull of a spacecraft. They penetrate materials that we have no current technology to produce in sufficient thickness to block them. And if we somehow built walls thick enough, the secondary cascade of radiation produced by those particles striking the shielding material would itself be lethal. Right now, as you process these words, the Earth's magnetic field, that massive, invisible shield generated by the churning of liquid iron in our planet's outer core, is deflecting an enormous fraction of this particle radiation away from our biosphere. It is not a perfect shield. Some of this radiation makes it through, which is why we have background radiation levels on the surface, why pilots and flight crews accumulate slightly elevated radiation doses over their careers, why astronauts on the International Space Station, still within the protective bubble of Earth's magnetosphere, already receive radiation doses significantly higher than those of us on the ground. But the magnetic field is doing an enormous amount of work on our behalf every second of every day, work that we do not notice and did not earn and cannot replicate on a spacecraft traveling between stars. Now consider what happens to a molecule of DNA when it is struck by a high-energy cosmic ray particle. The particle carries enough kinetic energy to physically sever the covalent bonds holding the nucleotide base pairs together. This is not a chemical process that can be undone with an antioxidant or repaired with a supplement. It is a mechanical event. A molecular machine has been physically broken. Our cells do have repair mechanisms for this kind of damage, and over short timescales, over the timescales of a mission to Mars, those mechanisms can keep pace with the rate of damage to a reasonable degree, though not perfectly. But an interstellar journey to even the nearest star system, Alpha Centauri, at the highest velocities we can currently conceive of achieving with plausible near-future technology, would take roughly 70,000 years. At the radiation doses present in the interstellar medium, unshielded, the cumulative damage to the DNA of every living cell in a human body over that timescale is not a clinical inconvenience. It is the complete and total degradation of the biological information that makes a human being a human being. The central nervous tissue, the most energetically expensive and structurally elaborate tissue we possess, is also among the most radiation sensitive. Cognitive function begins degrading on timescales of months to years at the flux levels present outside our heliosphere. The body is not a machine that can simply be repaired with spare parts. It is an informational structure encoded in chemistry, and the radiation environment of interstellar space is a very efficient eraser. But let us set the radiation problem aside for a moment and consider something even more fundamental. Consider thermodynamics. The human body is a thermodynamic marvel. It is, in the language of physics, a highly ordered, low-entropy structure maintained far from thermodynamic equilibrium by a continuous flow of energy and matter from its environment. You require approximately 2,000 calories per day not merely to perform work, but simply to maintain the structural order of your biology against the relentless pressure of the second law of thermodynamics, which states that closed systems inevitably move toward states of greater disorder. Your heart beats roughly 100,000 times per day. Your neurons fire electrochemical signals at rates of hundreds of impulses per second. Your mitochondria are performing approximately 150 watts of continuous biochemical work simply to keep your cellular architecture intact. This is not a simple process. It is one of the most complex and precisely balanced chemical systems that has ever existed in the known universe. A spacecraft traveling between stars is, for all practical purposes, a closed system. It is isolated from the massive energy flows and material cycles of a planetary biosphere. Over the timescales we are discussing, the problem of maintaining a closed-loop life support system that can sustain not just one human being, but a genetically viable population of human beings through multiple generations without catastrophic failure is not primarily an engineering challenge. It is a thermodynamic one. Entropy accumulates in closed systems. Materials degrade. Information degrades. The chemical and biological cycles that a terrestrial biosphere maintains through its connection to a star, through photosynthesis, through geological cycling, through an enormous web of interdependent organisms, cannot be replicated in a sealed container with the fidelity required over generational timescales. Each generation of recycled air, water, and food introduces additional inefficiencies, additional chemical contamination, additional biological drift. The system degrades. The mathematics of this are not forgiving, and the timescales of interstellar travel are not short. And then there is the geometry of space-time itself. The distances between stars are not large, in the way that the distance between two cities is large. They are large in a way that severs physical causality. The nearest star system to our own is approximately 4.2 light-years away. A light-year is the distance that light, traveling at the universal speed limit of approximately 300,000 kilometers per second, covers in a full calendar year. There is no mechanism in the known laws of physics that allows information or matter to travel faster than this. This is not a technological limitation. This is a structural feature of space-time itself, encoded in the geometry of special relativity. What this means for a colony outside our solar system is not merely that communication would be slow. It means that communication, in any operationally meaningful sense, would not exist. A message sent from a colony at Alpha Centauri to Earth would take 4.2 years to arrive. A response would take another 4.2 years to return. In any situation requiring real-time coordination, real-time guidance, or real-time rescue, that colony is perfectly absolutely and irrevocably alone. A structural failure in a life support system, a genetic bottleneck in the population, a cascading failure in the energy generation system, any one of 1,000 possible single points of failure would be met with silence. By the time Earth received the distress signal and formulated a response, the colony would have been extinct for years. The causal isolation imposed by the finite speed of light and the geometry of interstellar distances is not a problem of communication technology. It is a mathematical certainty written into the architecture of the universe. There is something I find genuinely moving in all of this, something that does not feel like defeat, but feels, on the contrary, like the deepest possible form of orientation. We live on a water-covered rock orbiting a middle-aged, unremarkable yellow star in the outer arm of a spiral galaxy containing several 100 billion other stars. The conditions on this particular rock are so specifically, so improbably suited to the maintenance of complex biological order that the probability of their chance occurrence anywhere in the observable universe is a number that strains the capacity of human intuition to grasp. The precise mass of our sun, producing the precise spectrum of electromagnetic radiation that our photosynthetic machinery is tuned to absorb, the precise distance of our orbit, keeping liquid water stable on the surface across billions of years, the precise mass of our planet, generating the gravitational field that holds an atmosphere and drives the magnetic dynamo that shields us from the radiation environment we have just described, the large moon stabilizing our axial tilt, the gas giants in the outer solar system absorbing or deflecting the majority of the impactors that would otherwise strike the inner planets with catastrophic regularity. These conditions did not arise for us. We arose from them, shaped by them over 4 billion years, every feature of our biology a direct response to their specific parameters. We are not travelers who happen to be stationed on Earth temporarily, waiting for technology sufficient to let us leave. We are configurations of matter that the Earth's specific physical conditions assembled over geological time. Our biochemistry runs on the particular mix of elements that Earth's geology and biology made available. Our circadian rhythms are calibrated to the 24-hour rotation of a planet of specific mass. Our immune systems are populated by organisms that have co-evolved with us in a specific biosphere for hundreds of millions of years. The universe is not hostile to life in general, perhaps, but it is almost completely, almost perfectly, almost devastatingly hostile to the specific configuration of matter and information that constitutes a human being, outside of the precise, improbable, irreplaceable envelope of conditions that this single small world provides. The most profound form of cosmic wonder available to us is not the fantasy of escaping into the interstellar void. It is the unflinching recognition of what we actually are. We are a localized, improbable, extraordinarily fragile pocket of ordered matter, sustained against the entropic tide of an enormous and indifferent universe by the very specific physical gifts of one oasis, one magnetic field, one atmosphere, one ocean, one star. The grandeur of that is not diminished by its boundaries. It is made more luminous by them.